Hello, hello, and welcome to the Dr. Toomer Talk Show. I'm Dr. Catherine Toomer. I'm a family medicine and community health physician and founder of Total Weight Care Institute. So, I know that my title today is a little bit controversial, maybe. Um, so, it's Trust Doctors or Die. We've been seeing a lot in the news recently of a lot of medical information, which um, unfortunately, um, some of it is rather disturbing for those of us who've studied medicine in any form. And so I'm just going to start with a little bit of background and why I say this. I mean, people seem to not understand what it is that we have to study to become a doctor. And maybe if I give you a little background, you'll understand where I'm coming from. So imagine in the human body, there are 37 trillion cells. That's cells in our body. When people talk about cells, we're talking about 37 trillion in the human body. There are 200 distinct cell types in the body, human body. There are 4 types of tissue. So what happens? Cells, when they come together, become cell types. There's different types of cells. When they come together, they form tissue. There are 4 distinct tissues in our body. There's epithelial, which is our skin. There's connective, which is kind of our cartilage and bones and things that connect our things. And there is muscle tissue, and there are nerve tissue. So these are all things that come together as cells and create tissue in our body that then come together and make larger things called organs. There are 78 organs in our body. There are 11 organ systems in our body, and those organ systems interact with one another through hormones, through other chemicals, through nerves. And so there are 11 of those organ systems. And generally in medicine, when you start talking about specialties, it's around those organ systems. So you have, the ophthalmologist for your eyes, your ENTs for your ear, nose, and throat, pulmonologist for your lungs, cardiologist for your heart. You understand what I'm talking about. But there are also 206 types of bones, or 206 bones in our body. Now, children are born with more bones. Of course, here my dogs start barking. There's um, more bones in children because they have several bones that start to fuse as they get older, and so they have fewer bones than adults do. So there's that. Now, and then when you start talking about nerves, our brain alone has billions of neurons, which are essentially nerves, and that just controls the rest of the body. So imagine all of these things, all of these organ systems, all of these different ways that they interact with one another. I haven't even talked about the hormones and talked about all the different chemicals, the neurochemicals, and the serotonins and the endorphins and the epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisols, and all the rest. All those are things that give signals to all the different parts of the body. Now imagine having to study all that in order to keep a human alive. Studying all of that in order to understand what it is that's going on with a person. Most medical schools in the United States are 4 years long. Then after that, the shortest amount of residency is 3 years. So that means 7 years of study to learn all of that. And of course, not everybody can learn everything, but that's 7 years. Some people go as many as 12 years, 13, 15 years studying their specific organ type. And so imagine the frustration of someone who knows we know what we don't know. And so it's very frustrating when we hear people who know even less than what we don't know talking about the human body as if they know so much, when we know how many trillions of little things working in the body that are happening. And so when I talk about trust your doctors or die, I know it's a little bit extreme. However, what doctor's job isn't to keep you alive. It's actually relatively easy to keep someone alive. It is, we work to keep you from dying. And the way we do that is by seeing the things that nobody else can, or nobody else knows, or nobody else knows what to look for. It's very easy to know, what a horse sounds like, but when do you know if it's a zebra? It takes expertise, it takes education, and it takes time in order to do that. And so a lot of times what we are trained for is to find the things that are out of the ordinary. And so are the things that are most important. The routine stuff, that's fine, but it's the out of the ordinary that you want somebody with expertise to know. Now, what I have been seeing, and this isn't just, oh, I'm just being jealous or I'm just being, a gatekeeper of the information. However, bedside manner matters, and we know this. And unfortunately, though, we sometimes equate bedside manner to knowledge, and that's not always the case. So you can have someone who's very, very empathetic, who's a very good listener, who is emotionally intelligent and makes you feel really good, but it doesn't mean that they know how to keep you alive. They'll listen to you, they'll make you feel really great. And I've succumbed to this. I'm human. I've done this too. Doctors I really, really, really love, and then they're really not that good in medicine. And then unfortunately that happens. But even the worst of doctors are still better than a lot of people who never, ever, ever went to med school, or who've never studied the human body, who've never studied the human psyche, who've never studied the biopsychosocial approach to anything related to the human condition. And so if I sound really kind of a little bit frustrated, it's because I'm hearing all this thing. We talk about acetaminophen, and we're talking about vaccinations, and we're talking about all these things. And we have people saying, I've done my research. Well, you're talking to people who've done 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years of study and research. And so they understand. And so recognizing someone who is a good physician is someone who has clinical mastery. That is what we're trained to have, is clinical mastery. Now, unfortunately, the healthcare system has sort of forced us into the situation where we're trained to do one thing, but we're in a system that only allows us to do other things. And so in order to have real clinical mastery, you have to know how to ask the right questions. But unfortunately, even when asking those questions, there's steps to the answers. And so often what happens, and this is how medicine works, you start at the basics. You do the basic things that are the most common things. You check for those things first. And if you don't see anything or find anything, or if you get a certain answer, then you go to the next step and you ask the next question. And then you ask the next question, and then you ask the next question. So it's sort of like going on a journey. And, before you leave, you're like, okay, which way do I turn first? And you're like, okay, get on the highway. That's the best thing. Get on the highway first, and then we'll start passing exits and we'll determine where you need to go next. That's essentially how medicine is. The first turn is the basic turn. But knowing how, and then even going the speed limit is the basic process. Or even getting off an off-ramp, knowing how to slow down when there's a car in front of you. The problem arises is that you want a Mario Andretti if there's suddenly an accident in front of you, and you need to avoid that accident in order not to have a crash. That's what doctors are. We're the ones behind the wheel who will keep you from crashing if there's something that happens that's out of the ordinary and that happens all of a sudden and you don't see it coming. That's what we do. The other is when you have clinical mastery, you have a certain level of flexibility and adaptability. And not one of the biggest issues, I guess, we run into is not being able to explain things very well so that people understand what we're doing and why. But essentially, that's what physicians are doing. There is no one way to skin a cat. And so when someone else you hear experiences something, there's always little bits of information that are nuanced that changes the direction that we need to go. So if you know that you need to go one place and you're driving one type of car that can only go a certain speed, then you may need to get off on one exit and take the back roads. Whereas someone else who's in a much faster car, or maybe a newer car, or a car that drives more smoothly, can go most of the way on the freeway before getting off at the last exit. So it's up to a person who understands what all the variables are that will tell you then what happens next. And that's essentially what physicians do. And that's what people who are well trained do. And that takes years and years and years of study and expertise. The other thing that is really good for physicians to have, and many of us have, and that's why we go to medical school, is curiosity. Diagnostic curiosity is important in that you have to know to ask the right questions. You have to ask the questions that you find will give you the answer. Now, one of the things that often happen is people like, I want to be tested for X, I want to be tested for Y, or they go to someone who promises to do all these tests for them that are really unnecessary. They're asking questions that when you get answers, they just create more questions than answers. And what we learn as physicians is how to ask questions in a way that give us the answers we need in order to get you to where you need to go. So, for example, someone says, how long is it going to take me to get from point A to point B? What's the weather? What are the road conditions? What kind of car are you going to be driving? How much traffic is there? So those are the questions we ask in order to determine how you're going to get to point B. If someone just says, well, you were just going to put you in a car and make you drive, well, guess what? All those questions that change the variables, you may still get there, but you don't realize you could have gotten there a whole lot faster, a whole lot smoother if you had followed the directions of someone who knew better to ask the right questions to get you there. And so one of the things that happens, or a few things that happen, I wrote some things down so I wouldn't forget. Pattern recognition is really important. And the only way to recognize a pattern is, one, to see the same thing over and over again. The other is to see when something changes. So the way something presents when you first see your doctor is one way. And then over time, it changes. And so the answer comes along as we go along. So often what happens is you'll see someone, they'll say, okay, at this phase of your disease state, it looks like this. There are several things that can look like this at this point. So what I'm going to do is start looking to see which one of those things it could be. Now, if you drop out of that process and you go to someone else who then takes my questions and my answers and then gives you a diagnosis, of course, it makes it seem like they know what they're doing because I've already done all the work for them. And I see that a lot. Once you have all your tests done, once you have years of history, once you have all these things going, it's very easy for someone else with lesser training or lesser knowledge to determine based on patterns what it is that it is. Or they've convinced you that's what it is and may or may not be. Or it's sort of there, but not quite. And so pattern recognition is really important. Integrative information is very important. It's from taking information from all these different places and pulling them together so that they make sense. So, having a headache plus having stomach pains plus having a fever may mean one thing. Could very well be a virus. But if you have a headache and you have a stomach ache and you don't have a fever, it could be allergies. It could be a food allergy. Or it could be stress. But how do you know? And so it's what doctors do is we figure things out along the way to determine what something is. But of course, there's steps to that way. It's just like a journey. And when you're going on a journey, you can't just get plopped down. We don't teleport, so we can't just plop you down where you want to go. We have to take the steps to get you there. The other thing that we do is investigate, and that's by asking questions and by doing tests. Now, not all tests give good answers. It may seem like some tests are better than other tests, but it really just depends on what you're looking for. And so it's very similar to, say, planting something. You have certain plants that grow in certain types of soil, and you have other plants that grow in other types of soil. But if you don't test the soil, how are you going to know which plant it could be? And that's essentially what we do. The other that we often have in medicine is emotional resilience. It can be very tiresome. It can be very frustrating, especially now in this environment where there's a lot of distrust around physicians. There's a lot of people saying we don't do, or we can't do, or we are, that there's a lot of misinformation on how we make our money, which we do not make money from pharmaceutical companies. We simply do not make money by prescribing medications. That is one of the biggest misconceptions that there is out there. We just don't. Um, and and so when in a situation where you're constantly disliked and constantly um, distrusted, it really takes a lot in order to maintain one's uh, equanimity or just your sanity in that situation. And so one of the things that is really, really important to understand is that when talking to anyone about how your body is, what your body is doing, it's okay to get advice, it's okay to listen, and it's okay to gather information. However, when it comes to pulling that information together and treating you in a way so that you do not cause, that doesn't cause you harm, it really takes a certain level of expertise. So if physicians who have been studying for 4 years or more, for 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years don't know something, then it's very unlikely that someone who studied 2 or 3 years is going to know more. They may know more about one specific area, but will they know enough to know how it integrates with other parts of the body, other organ systems, other tissues, and all the rest? And that's why I say when you don't trust your doctor, you can die, because what that means is you start seeking information from places that makes it more dangerous than less dangerous for you. Um, and so, and the reason I say this is because, and one of the things that you can do in order to understand if something is safe for you, when someone tells you something's wrong and they have the solution, have them give you the solution. But if they're selling you the solution, then always question. It's sort of like going into mechanic and saying, okay, well, a mechanic going into your engine and saying all these things are wrong with your engine, even though you hear a noise, but your car's still running. But all of a sudden, they're telling you there's all these things wrong with your engine and you've got to pay them an exorbitant amount a month. Otherwise, they scare you into thinking, oh, your engine's going to fall out. And then some people just ignore that and they keep driving and their car's fine. But you don't know who that is. And so it's sort of like being in a situation. Let me give you this analogy. Being in a situation where someone says, I'm going to drive you from point A to point B. And you're getting in a car with someone who doesn't have a license. And you have no idea that they're going to get you there safely or not. But they've convinced you that they know how to drive. They've convinced you that they have a nice car. They've shown you this really pretty car that they're going to drive you there in. But they don't know how to drive. Or they do. They know how to drive well enough to get you there, but not enough to get you there safely. Or someone who spends a lot of time as a passenger on a plane and says, you want to fly with me? I'm going to fly a plane to such, because I know a lot about planes because I spent a lot of time in them. And so I know it's all sounds, and I know like it sounds a bit like contrarian, but and the reason I'm saying all this is because I'm just seeing a lot of things being done to people and being done for people that are actually harmful, or people avoiding physician advice to take advice from people who are not physicians, avoiding prescriptions that we know have been tested and have been put through trials on humans to take unknown substances that do the exact same thing. However, it's not regulated and you don't know what's in them. And like I've said before, if you take anything and it acts immediately, it is a medication. It's just not a prescription. It's just not one that falls under the FDA to be prescribed, because there are very few things that can change how the body does immediately. Drugs and alcohol and water. So if you're taking something and it acts immediately, it's a drug, whether you recognize it as a drug or not. And if you're being given it by someone who does not knows how to prescribe, then they have no idea what that's doing to your body. There's very few things that can make changes in your body right away. And for me, like weight loss. The only way your body loses weight is by taking health in a healthy way, is by taking the energy stored in fat cells and using it in a way that's more efficient. But if you lose weight rapidly, it means one of two things. You're starving, and so you're going after that energy inappropriately, or you're losing water. And diuretics you can get diuretics over the counter. Midol, period medication, has diuretics in it. You can take that and put it in something that makes you lose a whole lot of water. So of course you're going to lose weight when you stand on a scale. Things that reduce inflammation. Ibuprofen is anti-inflammatory. You can throw anti-inflammatory medication into something, throw a diuretic in there, throw a little bit of compounded thyroid medication, and boom, you've got weight loss, and very rapid weight loss. But it may or may not always be safe. And that's where physicians come in. So I know I'm stepping a little bit on my soapbox, but if you have any questions about anything, whether it's health, wellness, or weight loss related, you can ask me now. Or you can write to me at help@drtumor.com, or you can go to my website at drtumor.com as well, and you can either make a strategy and plan appointment, schedule one for a consultation, or you can, find my email there. And of course, if you're listening now and you have people that share my videos, go to my YouTube channel and please subscribe. I'm still trying to get to 5,000 by the end of the year, so please share and let people know. So if you have any questions, I'm going to say hello to some people. Hello, Marcia from Barbados. Thank you for coming every Tuesday. And we have Daniel. Happy Tuesday to you too, Daniel. Thank you for coming. And Perry from Dallas, Texas. If you're listening, let me know where you're listening from. I forgot to ask you at the beginning. And I feel like I'll have a little bit of a bee in my bonnet. And part of that is because I've just been seeing so much bad information out there. And I just like, oh my God, no. And when you really care about people, and you care really, the human body is fascinating. It is absolutely fascinating. And of course, there's no one who can know all there is to know about the human body, because there's just so many things that are nuanced, and different things change different things for for everybody, the environment they're in, the food that they eat, the age, their genetics, and all the rest. So there's no way of knowing everything about everyone. However, it is curiosity, and it is clinical curiosity that kind of keeps us going to ask the right questions that help us get to the answers of what it is that's going on. Hello, Cindy. Thank you from Pittsburgh. Patsy from Lawrenceville. And is that Lawrenceville, Georgia? I know we have a Lawrenceville nearby, and then Perry from Dallas. Thank you for coming. Well, if you have any questions right now, you can ask me. I'm here every Tuesday. Dr. Tumor talks on Tuesday. Say that fast 5 times. And nice. We're not too far from one another. Oh, Cincinnati, Ohio. Nice to meet you, Tracy. Thank you for coming. So if you have questions at the end of every Q&A, at the end of every live, I have a Q&A. So even if you don't have questions today, you can come next Tuesday and ask me those questions. It doesn't have to be on the topic I'm talking about. It can really be on anything. And if I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know. But if I do know, I'll definitely give you an answer. So any questions, anyone? Did I miss anything in my notes? I had to write some stuff down because I wanted to make sure that I got everything in, because my brain has been going all week. So, all right. Well, if you don't have any more questions, thank you for coming to my Dr. Tumor Talks show. And I will see you next Tuesday, live, 6 p.m. Eastern, both on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And that is both in my live and my channels, Dr. Tumor, and also on blackdoctor.org. So thank you very much for coming, and I will see you next week.